Okay, how's everybody going? Welcome to the Audio Programmer Meetup. This is the June edition, and we're so proud and excited to have you here. As you may have heard, we have a new book out, The Complete Beginner's Guide to Audio Plugin Development, and I'm so lucky and fortunate to have the author of the book here with Matthijs Hollemans. How's it going, Matthijs?
Good. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And we also have a new face that's joining us as well. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Rhea Davidson. She is our new partnerships manager here at the Audio Programmer, and super excited to have her here all the way from sunny England. How are things going, Rhea?
All good, thank you. Not quite as sunny though.
So yeah, before we get started, just a couple announcements. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Focusrite and Sonics, for sponsoring the Audio Programmer Meetup. They help to make this possible and help to make all of our education initiatives possible. And very, very fortunate to have them as a sponsor, and they've been supporting us for quite a few years. And also, wanted to say that we've just celebrated our 7th anniversary here at the Audio Programmer. So 7 years of helping other people get into audio plugin development. And this new book, I think, is going to be a big step in that process and helping other people to be creative and to be able to express their creativity. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So the main theme of this meetup is to really talk about creating an audio plugin or creating your first audio plugin. And it's themed, of course, around this book that we've just released. And the way that this meetup is going to work is that Rhea has created a set of questions with us that we're going to discuss, and that we're going to talk a little bit about what that journey is about, what the intention of the book is, and also give an opportunity for everybody to ask questions and to have a dialogue with us, just to discuss the state of the industry, what the book is about, what the book discusses, what it doesn't cover, and just generally be able to tell you more about it and see what you all think. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the virtual mic over to Rhea with her first question, and I will become interviewee. So over to you, Rhea.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this, especially because I'm a learner in all things music myself. So this is quite an exciting book that I'm even considering potentially doing as well, and following. So I guess my first question to both of you is, why this book? What led you to write this, and what's the intentions behind it?
Like I said, we've just celebrated our 7th year here at the Audio Programmer, and we've had probably over 6 years since we've set up our Discord channel. So now we have over 10,500 audio developers and aspiring audio developers from all around the world. And so we have quite a history of hearing people's questions, hearing the problem areas when it comes to audio software development, hearing where people's struggles are. And I would say that probably one of the largest struggles has been around where to get started. So the question that we've received thousands and thousands of times is, hey, I want to start creating my own plugin. I want to get started. Where do I start? And then there is, to help answer that question, there's the subsequent set of questions that we need to ask to qualify people. So what operating system are you on? What type of plugin do you want to develop? And all of those lead you down subsequent paths into the next steps that you need to take. And there was really no place or no single resource that we could point people towards and say, start here. This will tell you everything that you need to know. And this is kind of ground zero for audio software development or audio plugin development. And Matthijs and I, we had this discussion, started having this discussion middle or late last year, and talking about how great it would be to have one place where all of this information could reside. And the amazing thing about this is that all the information that you find in the book, you could probably, if you had the time and the patience and the resource, you could go and you can find different videos, you can find all of these pieces of information lying around. But if time is important to you and you want one single place that you can go and say, I know this place, I know that this resource is going to have the answer, that's really what the book does for you, and that's the intention of the book. What do you think, Matthijs?
Yeah, so the book is called The Complete Beginner's Guide. It's probably in reverse, I'm not sure, but it says it on the front, Complete Beginner's Guide. It's really a book for complete beginners. And that means it's like a step-by-step tutorial style book that takes you from scratch, from zero, not knowing anything about audio programming or about software development in general. Step by step, we're building up your knowledge and we end up with a complete plugin. So it's not really a reference manual for all the different types of audio effects you can make. It doesn't talk about synths. It talks about one specific plugin, and it's actually a delay plugin. It's even a fairly basic delay plugin, but we explain everything in detail, every single step of the way, because if you are, let's say, a music producer and you have an idea for a plugin and you want to get started and you don't know anything about software development, about C++, about Juice, about IDEs, what tools do you even need to start working with this? Everything is explained in the book, step by step, follow along guide until you, basically, we don't expect you to know anything about this stuff. And by the end of the book, hopefully you'll understand everything you need to know in order to build plugins. And we're only building a single plugin, but the book is about 500 pages. So, we really go in depth, like all the steps you need in order to build the plugin. We go into things like circular buffers, filters, feedback. These are like basic techniques. Basic techniques that you will need to know to build basically any type of plugin. We will talk about all the details that go into building a plugin. So at the end of the book, you don't really just have an example project. You have like a complete plugin you could actually sell to people if you wanted to. That's how complete it is. So we talk about all of the things you need to know, and we go into a lot of detail. And I'm not going to claim that by the end of the book you'll be an expert, but it will make it easier to get started with, or to transition to other materials, other learning materials, other books, other courses, because you will have a pretty good understanding of everything that goes into building a plugin. So I think, why did we write this book? We wrote it because that doesn't exist. There's no place you can go and learn all these things as a cohesive unit. You could go and buy a C++ book, you could go and buy an audio programming book, but you don't know how to put these things together if you're a beginner. And so that's what we show, how everything fits together. And that's really I hope we succeeded in doing that. But that was really the thought behind this, is that, if someone comes to you and says, I want to learn audio programming, do you have a book for me? This is the book that we will give you, because it gets you started. It sets you off on the journey, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are so many things that are in audio software development that are a little bit nuanced. For instance, you talk about how to take your plugin and you want to run it live in your DAW as you're debugging it, as you're testing to see if it's outputting the right values and if it's doing the things it's supposed to do. That's one of those things that you have that are specific to audio software development that you don't really get. I'm trying to think of a relevant field where you would have a similar type of workflow, but as far as I can think of, that's the only place where you really get that type of where you need that type of workflow, where you hit the build button, it says built successfully, and then it opens up the DAW for you. You can open up your plugin inside of it, and then you can inspect and debug your plugin live within the DAW. And the book goes through all of the steps that you need to do that for both Windows and Mac.
Yeah, that's a good point. That like software development is a huge field, and there's lots of different software, and the techniques that you learn about for other fields may not apply to audio, and audio specific techniques you can't really find in generic books or generic courses. So there's a lot of this knowledge that exists mostly in the minds of the people who do it, and you can learn it by going on forums and going on our Discord, for example. So we've tried to combine all this, fundamental knowledge into this book, so you don't have to go and ask all the time. You can just go get it from the book.
Yeah. Over to you, Rhea.
And so I was just looking at Hubert Jan. I think I'm saying your name right. I hope so, Hubert. Asked about the difference between this and the last book, and now feels that that's been covered, but that's actually an interesting topic in itself. This is a foundational book, and it's interesting perhaps to people to understand that journey between the two and the difference between the two a little bit.
Yeah, so the synthesizer book, it assumes you know how to use C++, and it assumes you know a little bit about software development. And you don't need to be like a super experienced developer, but you need to know certain concepts. And we've had some questions from people who've read this book who clearly did not understand those basics yet, which is fine. We all have to start somewhere, but it's clearly that book didn't really fit their needs for learning. It assumed too much. It was too far ahead. So the synthesizer book, there's a lot of things that they have in common. There's a discussion about digital audio, and there's a discussion about filters. I basically copy pasted that between the two books because that doesn't change. But the steps that we take, the project that we built is completely different. This beginner's book is slower paced. It explains a lot more. It doesn't assume that you know anything. And the synthesizer book is really a good second book to read after this one. It's really this beginner's book prepares you for all the other materials out there. So, there's a book that comes up a lot that's recommended a lot, a book about making audio effects by Will Perkle. It's a great book. I recommend everyone to get it. But if you're a beginner, it's probably too advanced for you. You need to have some fundamental information about how to even read such a book, and that's the kind of materials we wanted to provide with this course to give you like all the background information you need to make sense of the rest of the field.
So another question that's come through that I think is quite a cool one to answer, and we talked a bit about this last week, Matthijs, is from Danny Taylor, who has expressed that he's a software developer outside of audio programming but loves music. And I know we talked a lot last week about the different types of people that could use this book for different types of reasons. It'd be interesting to cover that.
Yeah, so I think his question was that he already knows a bit about software development, maybe a lot about software development. I think it's still a useful book. There's stuff in there that if you already know C++ or another language, it's super obvious to you, so you can skip that. But we also start with audio programming from scratch. So there's a few different things that you need to learn in order to make plugins or other audio software. One of those things is the programming language. The other thing is the framework, which is, in our case, is Juice, which is separate from the programming language. It's its own thing you need to learn. But then there's also audio programming in general, the digital signal processing or DSP. So there are, you need to learn several different topics. And we try to teach it in the book. They go hand in hand. So we try to teach them hand in hand. You don't have to go and learn C++ first, and then you go learn Juice, and then you go to the audio programming stuff. We do it at the same time. So you'll learn all these things together as you go along. But if you already know C++, for example, that's fine. You can just skip through these sections of the book and just read the audio programming stuff and the Juice stuff. So I think it might be a little annoying to read, the explanations of how C++ works if you already know it. But there's still enough in the book would be new to you that you can learn from.
I think it'd be really interesting to understand the different, what people could gain from this book once they've completed it. And also along the way, like we talked a lot as well recently about the journey and the experience of actually learning. That's a topic I'm really interested in. It'd be great to hear about your experience of that and your perception of that for others.
Yeah. So from my perspective, if you're looking to get into releasing your own audio plugin, all of the knowledge that's in this book needs to be in your head or easily accessible. It's basically what I would call unavoidable knowledge. And some of that includes maybe you're a person who normally works on Mac, but you're building a plugin and you want that to be available to people on Windows. Well, now you're going to need to know a little bit about the Windows operating system. You're going to need to know a little bit about Microsoft Visual Studio. You're going to need to know about how working your way around that IDE rather than Xcode. You're going to need to know about some of the different techniques that they talk about in the book for being able to make sure that you can actually test your plugin to make sure that it's going to validate in certain DAWs like Logic, making sure that it does that. So if you're planning on releasing the plugin sometime in your future, you need to know everything that's in this book. It's unavoidable, pretty much. And like I said, all of the disparate pieces of information are out there in the interwebs, but a lot of it is nuanced. Like Matthijs was saying, you may know C++, but you may not know about how C++ manifests itself within the Juice framework. So knowing about C++ and knowing about the Juice framework, which is written in C++, and Juice's nuances are two separate things. So what Matthijs tries to do in this book is he tries to take all of this and glue it all together and really create that intersection where you have all of these disparate pieces of knowledge, and now they come together. Things like digital signal processing, the Juice framework, C++ is a programming language, the operating system specific stuff that you need to know about. All of that stuff is pretty much in this book. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, if you're asking like what do you get out of it, it's the knowledge for sure. I think it's also a way of thinking about how to solve problems. If you've never done software development before, it can be quite tough to get into. There's quite a learning curve. Your brain has to make all kinds of new connections in order to make sense of programming. It's a certain way of thinking about how to solve problems and how do you even approach writing a software program? And I mean, it can take years before you master that kind of thinking. What I hope to do with this book is just to give you a sense of what it's like. I would never claim that you read this book, you know how to write plugins. That's a bit too ambitious probably. But you will be well on your way to learning how to make plugins. We get people join the Discord and they say, hey, hello, I'm a music producer. I have this great idea for a plugin, and I want to learn how to make this plugin with C++ and Juice, and I'm really excited to get started. And then you don't hear from them again. And why is that? I think part of the reason is that it can be very overwhelming to get started with this. There's just so much you need to learn from all kinds of different angles. Like I said, there's C++, there's Juice, there's the development environment that you use, there's audio programming. There's all the little things. There's bugs. You type something wrong and the compiler gives some strange error message. How do you deal with that? How do you use the debugger to get rid of errors? I think a lot of people just give up because it's too much. And it's overwhelming, and the amount of information you get some kind of error message in C++, you go Google it. Even that's overwhelming because you need to know how to search for how to solve certain problems. And if you don't have that experience, then there's just too much. You have no idea what you're doing. You just, typing in random stuff, hoping the error goes away. That's not really a great way to learn this. And I think a lot of people just give up because it's just too much to handle. And they think, oh, I'm too stupid to understand this. I'm just going to go back to making music. I don't think that's true. I don't think people are too stupid to understand this. It's just a learning process that you may not be used to. I've been programming for a long time, and I still remember how bad I was at it at the beginning and how long it took me just to get to a point where I could actually write software that did what I wanted it to do. And even then, that software wasn't particularly well written, wasn't very good, had bugs, had crashes. It just takes time. And we want to sort of lower the threshold. We want to flatten the learning curve a bit by giving you this resource so that it's less overwhelming, so that you get some context for, what do I do? What do I need to learn? What can I put aside? For example, C++, it's a huge language, but you don't need to know everything about C++ in order to use it for audio programming. And there are some things you probably don't even want to use in audio programming. And this book sort of, it focuses your attention to the things that do matter for making plugins or other audio software. And it sort of lets you see what is important and what is not important as you're learning how to do these things. And so by focusing your attention to the stuff that does matter and giving you like a logical sequence of steps to get from nothing to a finished plugin, you actually, it's not just written, the book is not just written this way to make it a nice narrative. This is actually how you develop plugins for real. You start simple, then you add a feature, then you add a feature, and then you make the user interface, and then you add, you fix all the details, and that's the same structure the book follows. So I think the main reason or the main goal of this book is just to give you a sense of how do people write plugins for real. I mean, we use C++, we use Juice. These are the tools that people use in the industry. And the way the plugin is written, that's how a professional would actually write a plugin. So you actually get to see, how are things done in the industry, and how hopefully the book shows you that it's not magic. You could actually understand this. And maybe you need to read the book twice or 3 times before it clicks. Maybe you need to go and do another C++ course or watch some of the videos from Josh on YouTube. And maybe after a while, then it will click. But hopefully, by the end of the book, you'll have a much better idea of what's involved in building plugins. And that was really the main goal here.
I think it'd be really cool to share like the learning experience. So, you've got the book and, come from the perspective of a complete beginner that is pretty much self-taught myself, music and production and stuff, and often in isolation with nowhere to go for interpersonal advice outside of Google and the University of YouTube. It can be very difficult to navigate learning an entirely new skill. It'd be interesting to hear from both of you how you learn and how how you navigate putting the right time and energy into this, depending on your motivations. What you both think about that?
Yeah, the closest comparison that I can put it to is learning how to produce music. And when you're learning to produce music, there are once again there's once again this intersection of all of these different areas. Like you have the actual technical function of the DAW. How do you tell it to do what you need it to do? You have music theory. You have the sound engineering aspect. You have sound design. So you have all of these different areas, and that as you're going through this process, you're taking your attention and you're switching your attention to all of these different areas. Whereas an expert is able to kind of multi-thread, to use a computing term, multi-thread or multitask. And I think when you start to get into becoming more proficient in a skill, you start to be able to take all of these considerations into account. So you may be thinking about sound design while you're thinking about sound engineering, and you know that sound needs to have a certain EQ cut because it's not going to fit in the mix. And so to start off with, it becomes a single thread of thought. And then as you start to become more experienced, then you start to be able to think of multiple implications at once. And that's what I find that my learning experience has been like, because just when you're looking at two things, which is the JUICE framework and you're looking at C++, just looking at those two things, the JUICE framework expects information and the blocks of code to be put together in a certain way, but C++ has certain ways that it expects to be written. And so starting off, that was probably one of the most challenging parts of my journey, was just figuring out, okay, what is C++, and just trying to level up my skill set there as a software developer, and then trying to figure out the larger piece of, okay, for JUICE as a framework, as this kind of API where you're expected to put pieces together, how does that expect to be put together, and trying to navigate both of those. And I think that was probably one of the more challenging struggles earlier in my journey, and still today as well. So how about yourself, Matthijs?
Well, how to put things together in software, that's often called architecture. It's probably the main problem that all software projects have. Software is kind of, I don't really want to go deep into software architecture, but how to fit things together. You've got different building blocks. How do you put them together? That's really a very big problem in software development. And it's what people study, that people go to college to study this kind of thing. Fortunately, for most plugins, the architecture can be quite simple. Most plugins are kind of small in scope, which makes them pretty good projects for when you get started with learning. You don't want to start building a DAW as your first project. That would be totally mad. But you could, a plugin, like we've got this delay plugin. A delay plugin isn't super advanced, but you can see all the bits and pieces that go into it, which gives you a good idea of, how do you, if you want to make it bigger, how do you, what other pieces can go in there and where you can put them. So that's why we have this fairly straightforward project, so we can actually look at every single facet of it. And as you get more advanced, as you get more experience, for example, if you want to build a synthesizer are much more complex. So you need to do more thinking about, how to organize my code and so on. But that's not really something you need to worry about as a complete beginner. But it's something, if you like software development and you want to keep working with it, then that's probably going to be the major question you have with every project you do. Like, I've got all the different pieces, how do I fit them together? But to go back to the question a bit about learning, I think you can sort of see this book as a mentor. Like, most people will probably learn best if they have a mentor to guide them. But, it's not practical for everyone who wants to learn this stuff to have a real life mentor. So I kind of wrote this book to be like a printed version of a mentor that has lots of tips and tricks along the way. It's not just about how do you build this plugin. It's also a lot of extra background information and stuff. And as for the topic of learning, I think the best thing you can do if you want to pursue this kind of field is to learn how to learn. Like, how do you teach yourself things? There are lots of people who they go to school and they learn things and then they never learn anything again for the rest of their lives, right? You can't do software development with that attitude. You have to know how to pick up new skills and new techniques all the time. Like, languages change all the time. The Juice framework continually changes. Code that you wrote with an older version of Juice, a couple of years down the road, Juice changes, the code will no longer compile. So you need to keep track of what happens in Juice. You need to keep track of what happens in C++, and in the industry in general. There's always new technologies to learn, new techniques to learn. It's always learn. So getting into the habit of learning new things, that's probably the main skill that you want to acquire. And reading books. I'm a big fan of books. I like them so much that I write them. So books are a great way to learn things. Videos are a great way to learn things. Courses are a great way to learn things. If you want to make plugins and you read this book and it still doesn't make sense to you, try another course. There's other people who have courses on building plugins, on audio development, on C++. Just try a bunch of different things, and at some point it will click. And I can guarantee you that if you stick with it, at some point your brain will make all the necessary connections that you need in order to understand this stuff, and you will go, that's how it works. And that's when it starts to become fun. It starts to make sense, and you can build your own plugins and your own software, and you can make the computer do things you want it to do. That's really, it's almost addictive. It's really so much fun to have this kind of control over the computer. But you need to be willing to suffer through the frustrations of not understanding it. You need to stick with it until it does make sense, until you do get that, that the light bulb goes on and it starts to make sense. And, hopefully a book like this will help with that, will help you keep you motivated. It's almost like a self-help book for audio developers, I guess.
I love that. Self-help book for audio developers.
Yeah, it's really hard to learn programming. And I'm not saying this to scare people away. It's just that's just a fact, especially if if you have a creative background, like you're a music producer or something. It's a totally different way of looking at things and thinking about things, and you're gonna get frustrated. And so keeping motivated can be quite tough. So hopefully, we can, not just the book, but with the whole community, can help you stay motivated while you're learning. And I think you should really take advantage of joining the community, joining the Discord, asking questions about the book, asking questions about any problems you run into, and you're talking to people who have also gone through this and who are very willing to help you. And you need that support to keep learning, really.
Yeah, more than anything, I think the audio programmer is a tale of perseverance. For me, as a person who started the channel when I was first starting, it was really, the intention of the channel was just to show people, and luckily it worked out, that this is something that if you can just keep at it and just keep pushing on it and keep being curious for information, that the answers do come. And I think that actually builds into a larger theme of what becoming a quote unquote real software developer is all about. Is this, there's, at least I can say this for myself, there's this feeling of when I encounter a new challenge that I don't know anything about this particular piece of information. Let's say it's AI, getting AI into a plugin. And that somebody gave me a challenge to get AI into a plugin. There's this feeling, there's this confidence that I have that I don't know anything about that specific domain right now, but I know that I can learn it, and I know that that over time, with enough time, I will be able to do it. And that is that is something that comes up again and again for anybody who's been involved in software development, is that you get these various challenges of these different areas that you know nothing about. And there's this blob of documentation and you can't make any sense of it. And you have no idea what it's talking about. But there's this inner confidence that with enough Googling, with enough resources, with enough work, that you will get over the mountain with it eventually.
Yeah, and that's what I meant with, learning how to learn, knowing how to teach yourself things. Once you know that, then there's nothing really that's going to stop you from achieving what you want to achieve. And yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you are a music producer and you want to make plugins, you already have a massive advantage because you know music production. And plugins are both about the technical side of things and they're about the creative side of things. And if you've got the creative side covered, if you have some interesting idea for a plugin and you know how sound works and you know how music works and you know how to put a mix together and so on, that's already half the work, right? So I said that learning how to do this is difficult, and it's true, the technical side can be quite challenging, but like personally, I am a musician, but I'm not like a super music producer, right? So I kind of struggle with the music side of things sometimes. Like I'm building a plugin and I have no idea if it sounds good or not, or if it sounds interesting. Is this something that people would want to use? Does it fit into the workflow of like a certain type of music producer, or do people not actually work this way? Sometimes I just don't know because I don't know enough about that domain. But if you do know about that domain and now you want to make plugins, that's already a great start. So I just wanted to point out that even if you don't know anything about the technical side of things, having that knowledge of, how do you make music, you probably learned it all by yourself, or maybe you went to school for it. You already know a lot about, picking up new skills because you already did it by learning how to make music. So if that's you, then you're already in a pretty good place to start building plugins.
I can imagine that's really liberating as well, especially the concept that you were talking about, Josh, about knowing that you can. And quite often when you're at the beginning of something, you really doubt yourself, don't you? And you don't think that you can, but knowing you can really pushes you forwards. And if you can cling on to that, you'll definitely achieve something. And I think it's really interesting as well, Matthijs, what you were just saying about the music producer, and I want to tie that something to something that you mentioned before to me, which is about how this can teach you how to learn like an engineer. And I think that could apply really well for a lot of producers or anybody doing anything creative or technical. And it's one thing being a creative and having a creative mindset and a creative brain, but if you've also got, the other part of that, which is the more kind of, engineering, logical function, surely that's going to make you a better producer or better at anything else you're doing creatively.
Yeah. I mean, I would say for myself, it's given me a lot of insights and it's helped me to learn a lot in a completely different area, which is business. So we, as of course, Priya, that we have a couple of different types of businesses that we've set up through the audio programmer, recruitment, contracting, development. And in any, and I think this is a common thing within software development and also in business, and something about business that I learned through software development, which is that when you're trying to learn something or when you're trying to get information about something, you're being bombarded with all of this information, all this documentation about stuff. Just like in business, you're being bombarded with different emails, you're being bombarded with different information, different pieces of data, and that what I learned, at least the way that I think in terms of software development, is that I've learned to sift out all of the stuff that is not important and just get to the main idea, get to the main heart of what it is that I'm trying to do. And sometimes to get to that main heart of that idea, it may is, especially in software development, you have to go down 2 or 3 layers in order to get back to the heart. So you might have this core thing that you're trying to do. And then it says, in order to be able to do thing A, you need to know about thing B. And then you're looking into thing B and it says, well, thing B means that you need to download this other thing and you need to know about thing C. And that might happen 2 or 3 layers down before you get back to thing A. But in order to be able to accomplish that, you need to take because there's all of this other stuff that isn't important at the time. And you just need to be able to shut it out and say, that doesn't matter right now. I just need to get to the heart of the main idea of what it is that I'm trying to do. And that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned just about life, about business through software development, which is that ability to take all of the irrelevant stuff or all of the stuff that doesn't really matter and just be able to essentially just throw it out or put it to the side and really come back to the heart of it and say, okay, well, what are we really trying to do here? So I really feel strongly that there are a lot of life learning lessons that can be gained through the software development and through exercising that particular workflow.
Yeah, it's a type of thinking that you don't really use, or most people don't use, except if they're engineers. It's a very logical way of breaking down problems and thinking about how do you solve a problem like that. And, the book is about C++, the language, and Juice, the framework. But that's not something to, there are other languages people use for audio development, like Rust is an upcoming language. Some people use JavaScript with web audio. Some people use C instead of C++. There are other frameworks that people use. Sometimes there's no framework at all. Sometimes you need to directly talk to the hardware on like a DSP chip. Those things don't really matter that much. If you understand how to write software, the language isn't really that important. And the framework isn't really that important. We are starting with C++ and Juice simply because those are the 2 most important tools right now. They're like the industry standard tools. But if you want to do something else, if maybe you're thinking about doing audio on an embedded device, you probably wouldn't use Juice. You might not use C++. But it's still, it's the same process of thinking that you learn in the book that you would apply to, writing software on an embedded device, for example. It's really the actual technologies that we use. They are important because we need to use some language, we need to use some kind of framework, and these are just industry standard ones. But they're also not important because once you understand how to do software development, you can just learn whatever new language you need to use. You can learn whatever new framework you need to use. So in that sense, it doesn't really matter that we use C++ and Juice. But for a beginner, like C++ is not the easiest language to learn. It's actually some software developers, they run away as fast as they can when you mention the word C++. We also want to show it's not that difficult. It's not such a horrible language that some people make it out to be. It's not the most accessible language, but it makes the most sense to learn right now because this is the language that everyone's using. Maybe 10 years from now, people will use a totally different language, but it shouldn't be a problem for you because you can just learn the new language because you already know how to think like a software developer.
I think that ties in nicely with some of the questions that we've had about, the different languages that could be covered in this. And I know this is very fundamentally C++. So I think one of the things that you talked about not so long ago, sorry, I keep referring back to previous conversations, Matthijs, but you did say to me when we first met about how your experience as a developer over your time has been so much that once you've understood one language fully, every other language that you've gone on to learn ever since has become much easier just because of that fundamental knowledge. So, it feels to me like that's what this book is doing for you. It's given you that foundational, fundamental knowledge, and everything else that you learn will be much easier as a result.
Well, it gets you started, at least, you know. C++ is a huge language, and the book obviously doesn't explain every little detail about C++, but it gets the big picture across, hopefully. And there are languages that are completely different than C++ or Rust or Swift or other languages that are common. So there are different programming paradigms, and C++ fits into the object-oriented paradigm, basically. So all the object-oriented languages are very similar. There are also other languages, such as functional languages. They're more math-like. So if you know C++ and you want to learn a language like Haskell, that's just, you know, you starting from scratch, basically, because it's just a totally different way of thinking about programming again, which, if you're a software developer, is actually a great exercise, because it's really useful to be able to think about software development from different perspectives, like the object-oriented perspective and the functional perspective, and maybe even low-level machine code perspective. But that's really for if you're really serious about software development and you want to make a career out of it. For most things we do in audio development or regular software development, yeah, most languages are pretty much interchangeable. They look different, but the ideas are mostly the same. So yeah, once you know one, you pretty much know them all.
I think this leads also nicely to answering a couple of people's question around what other materials might be useful to supplement this book.
There's at the end of the book, there's a big list of other books that you could use, that you could read. I would personally, if you're interested, like you read the book and you find it fun and interesting to make plugins, I would just buy any book you can get your hands on that you can afford, because there's some overlap between different books. So, for example, I mentioned a book by Will Perkle. It's a great book. It's got it's a reference guide that has all kinds of different effects, and also how to build synthesizers. It has a book. There are other books, like Eric Tarr has a book called Hack Audio. It's very similar. It covers a lot of the same ground, but both authors look at it differently. And you can get insights from both books, right? So I've got a whole shelf behind me here full of audiobooks. I haven't even read them all. They are on my list of things to read, but just get as much stuff as you can and pick and choose from all the different books. I mean, there's books, there's videos, there's courses, there's so much learning materials, but you need to have like the basic foundational knowledge to make sense of them. And yeah, I mean, that's what we've tried to do with this book. Hopefully it works, and hopefully everybody will buy all these other books as well, because I think I have to me personally, I love reading these other audiobooks. There's always something interesting to learn about. There's also books about math. There's books about C++. There's so much stuff out there. You won't have any trouble, being bored if you're interested in learning this stuff, because there's just so much.
Yeah, there are a couple questions. This ties into a couple questions that I've seen on the chat. So, I would say generally, just in terms of, well, why Juice? Why C++? Why is it written the way that it's written? It's because there needs to be boundaries around what type of problem space that we're looking to tackle. So, for instance, one of the questions was, do we cover CMake in the book? And we, for people that don't know what CMake is a build system that's similar to what Juice offers with the Producer, but offers a lot more options. And do we cover CMake in the book? And the answer is no. And the reason is because if the book could easily be twice as long if we decided to cover CMake. CMake is actually such a big subject in itself. It has its own dedicated books just to CMake. And just in terms of being able to use CMake just with Juice, Juice has its own CMake API. And so there would need to even be a special section on just how do you use CMake in the way that Juice expects it to be used. So CMake was one of those challenges that we thankfully and decided not to tackle. Another thing is another question that's related is about other SDKs and or why not just do it in raw C++? And that once again goes into the intention of the book, which is that we need to mark off boundaries, and if we decided Juice is fantastic in the way that it serves to be an end-to-end solution to a problem, which is audio plugins and audio applications. And now roads are diverging a little bit in that there are more options that are coming into the market that you're able to kind of mix and match some of these different solutions together to come up with the same result. But in terms of solutions that are able to just have an all-encompassing intention behind them, an all-encompassing purpose that allows us to encapsulate the problem space into one book. Juice really does that. It's C++, kind of front to back. It's it really abstracts out a lot of the problems that you would normally need to deal with, such as just building a VST versus building an audio unit versus building an AAX. Juice actually does a lot of great abstraction of that under the hood. And it goes back to, well, that's not really what we're trying to learn in this book. We're not really trying to learn about how to interact with the SDKs themselves. If you wanted to do that, you can easily spend a year and just try to discuss and tackle that problem space in itself. But it's really about picking and choosing which problems that we want to tackle, but yet and having this balance between industry level tools, difficulty, and encapsulation all in one.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit to this. So in the beginning of the book, we will use the standard building blocks provided by Juice. So Juice has this thing called a delay line. That's what we'll use to build our plugin. But then later in the book, we'll actually build our own delay line from scratch, because this is based on the concept of something called that's a circular buffer, which is very common in audio programming, and it's really important to understand how it works. So we go into detail about building this circular buffer, and we throw the Juice thing out and we replace it with our own implementation. So you'll see in detail how we actually do like digital signal processing. It's not just a matter of taking the existing Juice building blocks and hooking them up together, which we also do, but then we also go deeper and look at how would Juice actually implement this delay line thing itself, and how can we even do it better, for example, or more suitable to our purposes. So we do use Juice where it makes sense, but we also show how to that you don't have to rely on everything provided by Juice. You can just stick in your own delay line or any of the other building blocks that we're using. So it's not just a how to use Juice book. It's also, we use Juice because it makes sense, but we also go a little bit deeper than that to show you what's digital audio, how does it, what's sampling, what are aliases, what are all these things that you will encounter in every audio programming project that you're doing, and have a little peek under the hood as well.
So another, just maybe one final question from the audience that I've noticed that might be worth us touching on is a member who bought the previous book that is asking about the UI related stuff and whether that's covered in this book.
Yeah, so the synthesizer book didn't really do much about UI. It had a very short chapter, sort of introducing the basic ideas, but it left building the UI as an exercise for the reader. In this book, we do spend a lot of time on actually building the UI. So it's not the first chapter, but it's one of the early chapters. We immediately start building the UI, and then the next chapter we build a custom look and feel. So one of the things about Juice that I personally am not a big fan of is how it looks out of the box. So we spend quite a bit of time showing you how to do drawing on the screen, how to do your custom graphics to make a much nicer user interface. And then the rest of the book keeps on adding features to the delay plugin, but it also, at the same time, it builds up the user interface as well. So by the end of the book, you'll have a plugin with a complete custom user interface. And I thought it was important to do that as well. It's not just about the audio processing part of a plugin, it's also about the user interface part of a plugin and how it talks to the host process as well. So we do things like tempo sync, which means the delay time is based on the actual tempo set by the host. That's one of those features where it's a bit more work to do, but it's one of those things that you want to have in a professional plugin. But it also shows you how certain communication with the host program like DAW, how that would work in a plugin. So we do quite a bit of things that are not just about pure audio processing, also UI, and also all the other little details that you would want to have in a professional type program plugin.
Any other words of wisdom, advice that either of you would like to impart on those on this journey?
I would just like to reiterate that this type of skill set is like a mind map, and that when you first jump in, it's like you're in a cave with a flashlight and you don't really know what's around you and you don't really know what there is to discover, and that feeling is a normal feeling, and really the intention of the book is to really give you a well-defined path that you can follow that will at least start to establish the core of what the landscape is like, and I think it does a good job of it.
I could probably think of something to say, but I think I've covered a lot what the book is about and what's in the book. And I think audio programming, it doesn't have to be something you do for a job. Like if you ask me, should I learn audio programming to get a job in the industry? I would say you should start out just doing it for fun and take your time to learn it, especially if you've never done any software development before. Like I said, it's going to take some time before it clicks in your head. It's just something that's fun to do, on the weekend, for example, or in your spare time, just as a recreational activity. Just learn about how to do audio programming, make some simple plugins, or whatever software you're interested in building, and just have fun playing around with it and keep learning. And at some point you'll have made a really cool plugin that you could sell, or maybe you'll have leveled up your skills so much you could get that job at that audio company that you admire, or you can just keep doing it for fun. It's all good. It's like audio programming. It's a bit of a special field, I guess. The people in it are a bit weird, maybe. Like it's not the standard corporate types that hang out in audio programming. It's also, on the whole, it doesn't pay as well as other fields. Like if you're doing this for the money, you should go to something like finance. If you're doing it for the soul, I would say, then audio programming is a great place. It's kind of like making music. If not everyone who makes music is going to be a successful artist, but that doesn't stop you from making music because you want to make music because it makes you feel good, or whatever it does for you. And so can software development. It's a very technical thing, but if you combine it with something like making plugins, it can also be a very creative, fulfilling thing. And to me, like making audio software is much more fun than making enterprise things or making websites or all the other stuff. It's creatively fulfilling at a level that most other software development isn't. It's kind of similar to making games. And we've mostly talked about making plugins from the point of view of a music producer. Game audio is also a thing. If you're interested in game audio, we don't really talk about it in this book, but the same principles apply. The same. I'm not a game audio programmer. I don't know exactly what tools they use and what languages they use. They probably don't use Juice. But the ideas in the book and how to think about software development, how to make audio software, it also applies if you want to do game development or game audio. And to me, that's the fun of audio programming, is that it's not just writing code. It's actually the audio side of it is fun too. And there are no correct answers if you're building audio plugins. If it sounds cool or it sounds interesting, then it's worth doing. I was just doing some experiment with this silly filter that doesn't make any sense at all, but it gave some really cool sound. So I'm putting it into a simple little plugin, and I'm going to release it for free just because it sounds interesting, and maybe someone finds it useful to put in their in their mix or something. But it's just a fun little thing to do, and I just like it as a recreational activity.
I love that, and I think it really, really plays on the fact that what we do in the kind of creative world of music is it really balances between staying away from always having an end goal and actually enjoying the experience of creating, but also you do get the benefit of having something at the end of it, whether it be exactly what you anticipated, which 9 times out of 10 isn't always the case, but that's part of the journey and part of the reason people do it. It's for the love of it and the fulfillment. And yeah, I really relate to that. Yeah,
we've had people on the Discord that bought the synthesizer book, and they'd say, "Oh, I can't wait to read this. I want to go through this in a weekend and do the whole book just in a couple of days," which is fine if that's what you want to do. But it's also fine just to take it slow and go on your own pace, work on it whenever you feel like it, and like you said, it doesn't have to be about the end result. It's about the journey. And it sounds kind of corny, but it is true. Like personally, I'm also a composer. I write music because I like the process of writing music. That's why I'm not a big fan of like the generative AI stuff for making music, because I don't write songs to end up with a song. I write songs because I like to go through the process of writing a song. And so if you're interested in making audio software, going through the process of writing the software, figuring out your audio processing algorithms and the approach to it, that's also fun. You might start thinking, "Oh, I'm going to make this a really cool reverb." And while you're doing the reverb, you're experimenting with it, and maybe you make a mistake, or maybe it's a lucky accident, and it does something really weird, different, but sounds very interesting. And then you go that direction. And you may have had in mind that you were going to write this type of plugin, but you end up over there. And it's fine, because you weren't really too focused on, I need to do this particular thing. You just, going with the flow. Just the same thing with writing music. You may not, where you end up with the song is probably not where you started out. And so, I think it's really cool just to take it at your own pace, at your own time, and not worry too much about where you end up. And if you do the book and halfway through you get distracted and you start building your own plugin and you skip the rest of the book, that's all good too, because the whole idea is to get you inspired and to get you motivated and get you to the point where you are ready to start building your own stuff. And if that's halfway through the book, you're at that point already, great. Don't need to finish the book, just go do your thing. And if you've finished the book and it still doesn't make sense to you, and maybe you need to take a little break and read it again, that's also good. It's you're completely in charge of how you want to do this. And that's also part of learning how to learn, because there's no teacher that tells you how to do things. So if you feel like you're at the point where you've learned enough and you want to go do your thing, excellent.
I think it's also a great way for people to be within a community. So like for anybody who isn't in our Discord community, this would be a great opportunity to jump in, because going on the journey of learning this together and getting advice from experts that have already gone on the journey, it's a really great space for people to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that it's probably more of an exciting time than ever right now for audio software development. There are a lot of um, different workflows that are being explored. Of course, everybody knows about all of the different things we're trying to look at with AI and that side of things. Um, Plugin development in itself has has not really revolutionized itself probably over the past 20 years. And I would say that now it's starting to approach that time where I feel like people are really experimenting. And now we're seeing more independent developers than ever. That to me is really exciting. It feels like it's becoming almost like this Bandcamp like type of space where people are exploring different workflows, expressing themselves creatively through code and through plugin development. And I think that it's a better time than ever to get your feet wet, you know, to get creative and to put something out. Just take those ideas that you have in your mind and make them real. And now, you know, when we started out the audio programmer, there weren't very many resources to learn this, to learn how to do this. And now we have books, we have videos, resources. There are a lot of different things out there to help people get involved. Communities, you know, not just our community, but there are other ones as well that you know encourage people to, and the people that are involved are very encouraging. Yeah, we've seen a big change in this space over the past 5 years from one that has been very a little bit, I don't want to use the word, but elitist in terms of not being the most welcoming space. And now it feels like now it's so exciting because you know, people come into our community, they're welcomed no matter where they may be in their journey. You know, where there are so many people that are in the community that are really excited and enthusiastic about sharing knowledge, knowledge that was very difficult to come by only a few years ago. So, yeah, it's a good time to get involved and get creative, and I'm looking forward to seeing what people come up with. All right, I think that's about it. Looks like we're running out of questions. I'm just having a look through.
Yeah, so one question that I'd like to answer. It was about the version of Juice and if you could use the free version. So the book is written for Juice version 7. It's been tested with Juice version 8, which is supposed to come out pretty soon. You can use it for free. Like even if you intend to make like commercial plugins or something, you can follow the book for free. Juice is a paid framework, just in case that wasn't clear. You can use it for free under certain circumstances, but for learning purposes, if you just do stuff on your own computer, it's basically always free. The C++ software that you will need to use is also free. So for the Mac OS, that would be something called Xcode. For Windows, it would be Visual Studio. You can download those for free as well. And the book explains exactly how to install these things. It also explains exactly how to get Juice and all the how to install it and everything related to those questions. So, I mean, the book isn't free, but everything else is. So you can get started pretty cheaply. You don't have to invest in. I mean, you don't even have to invest in a fancy computer as long as your computer is something from the last 10 years or so. It should work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, related to that, there's a person that asked if we were just about the Juice licensing terms and if I or we are satisfied with the adjustments that have been made to the complaints. I'm happy to answer that and say that I'm a strong believer that Juice delivers a lot of value that is very difficult to find elsewhere in the industry. Through alternative frameworks. There are other plugin frameworks that are out there, and that some of them are very liberally licensed or free to use and open source. And I I would say that the value that the value that juice delivers is probably well beyond what it costs most people to actually pay in terms of what the license is, and that we're in a fortunate position where if you wanted to do a one-off perpetual one-time payoff for the license, you can do that, and I think that is really awesome and is something that that Juice doesn't necessarily need to offer, but they do, and I think that I think that it's great value, and that I'm thankful that we haven't moved into an area where it becomes product royalty specific licensing, where they take a where they take a percentage of the royalties that you get from your product. I think that would deter a lot of people from using Juice. But I would say that the first version of the licensing terms were a little bit far-reaching or ambitious in terms of what they were looking to do, but that they heard the feedback from the community, and that they were responsive to it, and they came back and they were responsive, and they were very they were very forthcoming and very responsive. So I'm happy with where things are at now, and I think that the industry would not be as far as it is without Juice. So
Yeah,
I'm happy with where things are at.
I think Juice is pretty great. It's not perfect, but yeah, nothing is. It's used by many plugins, probably like I wouldn't say half, but a lot of the plugins that you have on your disk drive are probably using Juice to some extent. We say it's the industry standard. It's probably true. There are people who roll their own frameworks. There are other frameworks you can use. Again, if you understand the thinking behind how to use these things, you could use something else, right? So if you don't like the Juice license terms, well, take the book and rewrite the code using iPlug, for example. It's a good exercise. It will teach you the differences between the different frameworks, so you're not just stuck on Juice. There's value in knowing how to maybe use the VST3 SDK directly, or the AX SDK, or any of the other technologies you can use for this. It's a good learning exercise to even just try that just for fun, to see how this works. But for practical purposes, I mean, I would use Juice for all my plugins, pretty much.
Yeah.
And Juice is not free, but there's other costs as well involved in publishing software, including the computer that you use. You need to buy like an Apple Developer Program membership. You need to get certificates on Windows. So if you want to do this as a business, there are costs, which is true for every business. If you want to do this as a hobby, you can pretty much do it for free, and that won't give may not want to go into big detail here in all the licensing issues and the certificates and signing and so on. The book does go into those issues, how to code sign your binary. So if you want to ship it to other users, that they don't get any of the strange, scary error messages, like macOS will say, "Oh, this plugin is not signed. I don't know who made this, so you can't use it." The book explains how to get past those issues. So, but most of it you can just, if you do this as a hobby, you can do it mostly for free or almost free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and whatever you choose to do for your audio development stack it's going to have its advantages and disadvantages. As I said before, you could look at using very liberally licensed frameworks or parts, different parts of what Juice does, but you have a lot more manual plumbing together that you're going to need to do to get those parts. Those parts weren't necessarily built to fit each other. So you're going to need to do a lot of connecting the dots in order to get those parts together. You also have C major as another way that's quickly becoming an alternative path to software development, which is very interesting. I think that it's very interesting But once again, that approach also has its disadvantages, which are that you have C major, which is a domain-specific language, so it's not a general purpose language like C++, Python, JavaScript, and so on. It's specifically for C major, specifically for audio development. And then you're using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS for the user interface. And so now you're talking about needing to learn 2 to 4 different workflows, paradigms, and then when you look at JavaScript, the user interface development, you have loads of different frameworks, you have loads of different libraries that has its own universe that it operates in. So even though it may be easier on some levels, there are some other challenges that for some people, they may say, well, if I just learn C++ as one language, now I can develop the user interface. I can develop on the engine and basically be able to encapsulate that entire product just with one language. So it's all about what you want right now, but it is exciting that those options are opening up, and I think that those are going to open up what possibilities we see in terms of products as well. Like Matthijs was saying, Juice out of the box, the user experience and user interface layer has its challenges, and you need to know how to do a little bit of wrangling in order to be able to get a unique user experience out of that. But now they've also started offering web views as well as an alternative workflow within Juice, and that can bring out some new possibilities as well. So the world is opening up, and I think that it's very exciting.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that in the book we only use C++. We built a user interface with C++. We don't use any web technologies such as JavaScript and HTML and so on, simply because the intended audience is people who have never written any code before, and we didn't really want to introduce multiple languages at the same time. So we're just sticking with C++. Maybe in the future it will make more sense. More people will start to use web technologies for building plugins. It's a question we sometimes get, should I use this new web stuff to build my user interfaces, or should I stick with C++? In the book, we're sticking with C++. It's really I should say, I guess the standard way to do it for now. Maybe in the future that will change, and other technologies will make more sense. But again, once you learn how to think like an engineer, like a software developer, you can pick that up yourself, and you can maybe take this user interface from the plugin that you make in this book and stick it into a web view and see how that works. There's always new things to learn, and the user interface, how we build user interfaces, it's just one of those things that will change over time. And right now it's sort of maybe in a little transition phase between older technology and newer technology. Maybe the web stuff won't go anywhere, and everyone will switch back to using C++. Who knows? But it's interesting that we have all these possibilities opening up, and there's never you never run out of stuff to play with and experiment with and learn. It's a never-ending source of ideas and new things you can try.
Yeah, and also don't do like our plugin customers do, and get into a mindset of, oh, I need this other thing, or I need to know about this other thing in order to start creating, and then you end up in this. Okay, is it C major? Is it Juice? Is it this other? Is it iPlug? Is it all? You could start getting stuck trying to choose the right path, and that could actually even prevent you from getting started. The biggest key is just get started. Start somewhere, and if it's not the right solution, that'll become apparent soon enough. Cool. I think we've answered all of the questions here. Are there any other questions on our list, Ria?
No, there's nothing left on our list. No.
Okay, so I'm quickly doing what I do every month, which is looking for the date of our next meetup. Okay, great. So, yes, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. Thanks once again to our sponsors, Focusrite and Sonics. Thank you to Matthijs and to Ria for joining in the meetup. This is really awesome. We hope that we answered all of your questions, and if we haven't, please feel free to get in touch with us on the Discord. Matthijs is there, Ria is actually there, and I'm there. So you can get in touch with us there. We have various services around recruitment, software development, contracting, and so on that we also offer. Find out more about that at theaudioprogrammer.com. And finally, of course, if you found the book interesting and you found this discussion interesting and you want to get involved in plugin development, we encourage you to check out the book. You can find out more about it on theaudioprogrammer.com/learn. And that book is there, as well as the previous book that Matthijs wrote on building a synthesizer. So if those things are interesting for you, please feel free to check it out and ask any questions along the way. Yeah, thank you so much. Our next meetup is going to be on the 9th of June. So join us 9th of June. And in the meantime, we'll have announcements about who the guests are going to be. And if there is nothing else, I guess we will sign off.